The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom released recently to universal critical acclaim and record-breaking sales numbers. I myself just recently finished the game, and I thought it was fantastic. Although, I do have a few dissenting opinions I'd like to bring up, one of which requires me to share an anecdote. At one point, while I was playing the game, I got into a fight with a moblin. I was doing everything you're expected to do: dodge, attack with the flurry rush, repeat, and then that thought popped into my head. Man, Zelda 2 is a good game. Although it would be fair to consider Zelda 2 the black sheep of the series, I think at this point most can agree that it's not lesser for it. I've made my opinions about Zelda 2 very clear over the years, as well as my search for the game that would follow in its huge footsteps. I've come up short in the past, but the future looks bright. As for the present, it pleases me to say that Zelda 2 is better than ever. Created by Hoverbat, Zelda Again, Link is Adventuresome is in my opinion the definitive way to play Zelda 2. There have been quality of life ROM hacks created that adjust the experience of Zelda 2, but none have gone as far as Hoverbat's project. Because instead of merely being a ROM hack, the game was ported into GameMaker. As a huge fan of the original game, nothing feels like it was lost in the conversion, which might help to alleviate some skeptics' concerns. Working in GameMaker allowed Hoverbat to make much more meaningful changes, such as widescreen support and even new content. The amount of changes and additions in this version is so vast, it'd be fruitless to document and list every single one. So instead, I'll stick to the most meaningful changes. First up is the expansion to pre-existing content. In my original video, I complimented the quests that were meant to be completed in each of Zelda 2's towns. I do still think they're a good change of pace when sandwiched between treks to the palaces, but it definitely comes across as a first try. Some quests leave a lot to be desired. In the original Zelda 2, many of them were easily completed and were self-contained in the town they could be found in. Hoverbat's Zelda 2 expands every single one of these quests for the better. Getting a lady a drink of water being changed to liberating a town's well water is just one of the few changes done in this version. The new areas these quests are found in fit into the big picture remarkably well, too. Sometimes it's hard to remember where the original material ends and the new material begins. Well, only sometimes, though. I'm never really a fan of these pogo platforming sections seen in these types of games. Zelda 2 in particular is fairly wonky with its jumping mechanics. Thankfully, this is the worst it gets. Some of the most ubiquitous changes can be found in the save/continue system. Zelda 2 was pretty infamous for its game over mechanics. Whenever Link ran out of lives, he would be hit with the game over, sent to the North Castle from the start of the game, with his experience dropped down to 0. The only real way to save in the original game was during a game over as well. This has all been completely reworked. Now game overs send you to the last town you saved at via the new save houses, or at the entrance of the temple you last game overed in. Even better, Link retains a portion of his experience points. All of this really helps to address some of the biggest complaints regarding Zelda 2's, at times, egregious difficulty. The live system has also seen some tweaks. Originally, sprawled throughout the world were small replicas of Link that functioned as extra lives. The problem was that these lives were one and done, so once they were lost, they could never be gained again. So first-time players unaware of this mechanic would pick up these lives whenever they first saw them, and frivolously waste them while playing through the game normally. Whereas for veterans, the extra lives would only be grabbed to help conquer a difficult section of the game. I usually save them for the trek to the Great Palace, since so long as you made it to the palace proper, you got to continue at the beginning of it, even in the original game. This life system was never ideal though, and now the Link dolls increase the life maximum, meaning the player can end up with 6 lives by the end of the game if they explore enough. This change makes it so novice and veteran alike can benefit from the extra lives equally. There's even a way to mitigate the amount of deaths caused by the most common ailment in the game. Bottomless pits were terrifying in Zelda 2, because falling in one meant instant death and one of your lives was lost. Thanks to the intense knockback Link receives from enemies and certain precarious platforming sections, falling to his death was more frequent than anyone would like. Now there's an item Link can find that will cause a health penalty instead of instant death when falling into a pit. This is just one of the many new items strewn throughout the world, and with heart containers and magic bottles being split into thirds, this means that there's significantly more areas and content to discover that'll throw even the most dedicated Zelda II veteran off. When discussing the changes made to this version of Zelda II, there's a kind of common thread that can be discovered between most of them, and it's that they all serve to make the game easier. I could see this possibly turning some hardcore Zelda II fans off. Zelda II has a reputation for being a difficult game, but in the context of other infamous NES games, it doesn't really hold a candle to Castlevania or Contra. So some might wonder if it needed some of these changes. Putting aside the fact that much of the items that decrease the difficulty need to be found off the beaten path in the world, I find that much of the difficulty that was scaled back in Hoverbat Zelda II was tedium. The spirit of Zelda II remains strong, even if things like the game over runbacks were reduced. Not to mention that there are some examples where the difficulty was increased, such as the case for the boss of the Maze Palace, whose new arena makes him a significantly more difficult fight. For the better, I might add. There's even a few more changes to other boss arenas in the game's second quest, an addition that I believe should be experienced yourself instead of spoiled in a YouTube video. I basically have nothing but praise to give to this project. With all of the additions and changes, it comes across as the Zelda 2.5 we never got. Its biggest flaw is the presentation of the project itself. Getting it from Hoverbat's itch page feels like you're about to download a rap program or something. Controller support is also somewhat spotty. I needed to use Steam's controller middleware to get mine to work properly. I also used Steam to clean up the presentation somewhat. Looks pretty cool, right? These are all things that I feel could be ironed out in time. Hoverbat continues to update and tweak the game, and I highly recommend that anyone interested in this project throw a couple of bucks their way. The game is free to download on their itch.io page, which I will also link in the description. To think that Zelda 2, of all the Zelda games, received such a loving revamp continues to astound me. Thank you for your work, Hoverbat, and thank you all for watching. I'll be back soon. Yes, there is a randomizer.